Guys.
Yes, Nabila.
So my name is Nabila Mpanga. For those who didn't catch it at the start, I'm 22 years old and I live in the UK. So I had sickle cell anemia, so I know about it a lot. It's practically my lifestyle. I know about it based on the UK level, but I also know a bit about it in Uganda because obviously I'm Ugandan and I was born in Uganda. So for me, with my story, I'll briefly give a background. I was born in Uganda. I was diagnosed with sickle cell straight away because my mom had my brother who also had sickle cell. So with that, how it was is my mom had 4 kids already. She had no idea she had sickle cell. She had no idea my dad had sickle cell. Obviously they both carried the trait. They had their first 4 kids. Those kids were fine, no symptoms at all. And then they had my brother Fauzan, and Fauzan started showing symptoms, and Fauzan didn't get diagnosed for the first year. They had no idea what was going on. He was very sick. Eventually, my mother phoned Dr. Christopher Ndugwa, and that's the doctor that managed to diagnose Fauzan with sickle cell. And my mom had decided to obviously stop giving birth because she had enough kids already. But, with God's grace, I guess, I still came about. So yeah, I was diagnosed with sickle cell because Dr. Christopher Ndugwa told my mother, because you were lucky enough to have 4 kids who didn't have it, your next child is probably going to have it. So yeah, I had, from childhood, my sickle cell has been bad, I would say, since childhood. From childhood, it was a lot of pain crises. I feel like my younger years, it wasn't too many crises. It was bad, but it was manageable. It got, I'll say it got bad around puberty years. That's when I really started having multiple crises back and forth. Sickle cell in Uganda, I only stayed in Uganda for about 5 years. And we were under Dr. Christopher Ndugwa, and he was amazing. He knew everything about this disease. Like he was basically the best doctor we could have in Uganda. So we were very grateful that my mom found him, and we were very grateful to have him as our childhood doctor. In fact, he will come back again later on in the story. So yeah, at 5, I moved from Uganda and I came to the UK. The UK as well, obviously now different weather, and sickle cell works with weather. I had to adjust to the cold. I didn't adjust to the cold. Every time it got to winter, I would end up in the hospital. Every time it got to summer, I would end up in the hospital. Basically, every new season, so it means a crisis. I got sorry guys, I'm going to try and I would say make the story as brief as possible, because if I tell the full story, we'll be here for the whole day, in fact. So when I got here, I got under a new team of hematology doctors, and to say the least, they struggled a bit with my management. Of course, they didn't admit that they struggled, but it was evident that they struggled because I was having crises practically every week. Like I would be back in hospital weekly, and I was on a lot of medication, but I was still having problems. I got to a point by the age of 18, I was basically on the highest pain pain relief they could offer. And the problem with that is the body gets used to this pain relief, which means it stops reacting to it. Once the body is used to certain medication, the medication does not work as it should do. So that's what my body did, because I was on these medications so much. It just stopped. My body just stopped reacting. I got very, very unwell to the point where they had no plans. I had tried hydroxycarbamide, or also known as hydroxyurea. I had tried that for maybe 4 years. It did nothing for me personally. It did work for my brother Fauzan. For around 5 years, Fauzan went crisis-free. He barely showed any symptoms. 5 years, he was fine, basically. But for me, it was the opposite. It did nothing at all for me. I was still in hospital. I still had multiple symptoms. So that's the thing about certain medications, is not everyone is the same.